Studio Link in Affinity Publisher allows us to access primary tools from Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer without leaving Publisher. Studio Link works when you own both Affinity Designer and Affinity Photo and have the latest versions installed. So in this document, I'd like to have a small illustration at the head of each of my chapter pages. So what I'm going to do is use some of my tools in Affinity Designer. So I'm going to come over to my master pages and I'm going to click on master page B because that's the master page I've got set up for each of my chapter title pages. So I'm going to hit Control and W, and that's just going to show you some guides that I've already got set up. So you'll see I've got my picture box here with the cross through the middle. That's where all of my illustrations sit. I've also got a page number here, and I've set up a guide just to show me where the top of my text box is so I can see where I need to set my illustration. So now I'm going to come over to Designer Persona, and I'm going to zoom in to make it a little easier to draw. Now, because I can now access tools from Affinity Designer, I'm going to select my pencil tool and come over to my Stroke Studio and change the width of the tool. And I can also access things like stabilizers. I'm going to have a window stabilizer applied just to smooth out my drawing lines. And then I can start drawing. I'm going to use a graphics tablet just to make things a little bit easier. I'm looking for a sort of rough hand-drawn look. I come over to my node tool and I can just edit the nodes to line everything up a little differently and fine-tune it. But I still want a sort of asymmetrical look in this case. Now, if I come over to the curves I've just created, on my Layers Studio, I can group those all together and start moving them as a single object. And there I can align them to the centre of my page. Now, if I come back over to Publisher Persona and zoom back out, you'll see that's been applied to my master page, but it's still completely editable. And it's been applied to my whole document. And if I just hit Control and W again, you can have a rough idea of how it's going to look when it's printed. I can also use the vector brush tool in Designer Persona. So I want to add a small area of cross-hatching to the bottom of my master page A. So I'm going to come over here to my master page A and go to Designer Persona and just select my vector brush tool. And I can use this in the exact same way as I would in Affinity Designer. So I'm going to come over to my Brushes Studio and I can select from all my different brushes over here. I'm going to select this crosshatch brush. I can change the colour up here. I'm going to make it blue. And I'm just going to use it, like I said, in exactly the same way as I would in Affinity Designer. And I can change my brush stroke, change the colour, the stroke width, etc. And I can also edit the nodes. Now I'm going to group all of these curves, and then I can move them around and reposition them. So I'm just going to send them behind my page number. So if I come back over to Publisher Persona, you'll see that's part of my master page A. and is now applied to my book pages. I can also use the paintbrush tool to use my raster brushes by going into Photo Persona, which you'll see has given me this paint splatter effect on my other pages.